On the evening of Thursday, December 7th, 2000, the streets of Dublin, Ireland, were being pummeled by a relentless storm. The wind howled through the city's narrow alleyways, and the rain fell in sheets, threatening to flood the waterways. It was the kind of night that made most people want to stay indoors, huddled under a warm blanket with a hot cup of tea. However, for the employees of Bank of Ireland Asset Management, braving the elements was a necessity. The company's annual holiday party was scheduled for that night, and attendance was all but mandatory. In an effort to make the most of the evening despite the inclement weather, a group of colleagues decided to meet up at a cozy bar called Copperface Jack's for a pre-dinner drink. The bar was just a short 10-minute walk from the Hilton Hotel, where the company party was set to take place. As the group settled in and began to unwind over pints of Guinness, they commiserated about the unfortunate timing of the Dublin taxi drivers' strike, which meant that they would have to walk to the hotel in the pouring rain. Among the revelers at Copperface Jack's that night was a 22-year-old IT employee named Trevor Deely. Trevor was the youngest of 4 siblings and was known for his infectious smile and kind heart. He had been working at Bank of Ireland Asset Management for just over a year, and had already made a name for himself as a reliable and hard-working member of the team. As the night wore on, the group made their way to the Hilton Hotel for the holiday party. The festivities continued well into the early morning hours, with laughter and chatter filling the air. Some of the younger members of the group, including Trevor, decided to keep the party going even after the official event had ended. They made their way to a nearby club called Buck Whaley's, where they danced and drank until the wee hours of the morning. Eventually, even the most dedicated partygoers had to admit defeat. At around 3:30 a.m. on December 8th, the group said their goodbyes and went their separate ways, eager to catch a few hours of sleep before the workday began anew. Later that morning, as the IT department at Bank of Ireland Asset Management began to fill up, it quickly became apparent that one member of the team was missing, Trevor Deely. At first, no one was particularly concerned. Given the previous night's festivities, it was not unusual for employees to arrive a bit late or take a sick day. Trevor's supervisor, Dara Tracy, reasoned that the young man had probably just overslept and would be in later. He made a mental note to have a gentle word with Trevor about his absence, but saw no reason to raise the alarm just yet. However, as the day wore on and there was still no sign of Trevor, Dara began to grow increasingly concerned. He asked around the office to see if anyone had heard from Trevor, but no one had. As Monday morning dawned and Trevor failed to show up for work once again, the sense of unease that had been building over the weekend reached a fever pitch. It was at this point that a crucial piece of information came to light. Carl Pender, one of Trevor's colleagues in the IT department, revealed that he had actually seen Trevor in the early hours of December 8th, after the group had left Buck Whaley's. Carl had been working the night shift and was surprised to see Trevor arrive at the office around 3:30 a.m., soaking wet from the rain. The two had chatted briefly over coffee and tea before Trevor gathered his things, including a large umbrella, and left the building around 4 a.m. According to Carl, Trevor had seemed perfectly fine, if a bit tired, and had given no indication that anything was amiss. This new information sent a chill down the spines of Trevor's friends and family. If Trevor had made it safely back to the office after the night out, then what had happened to him after he left? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over everything. Trevor's parents, Michael and Ann Deely, were informed of their son's disappearance between 10 and 10:30 a.m. on December 11th. The news hit them like a punch to the gut, and they immediately sprang into action. Michael raced to Trevor's apartment, hoping against hope that he would find his son there, safe and sound. However, when he arrived, there was no sign of Trevor. The apartment was empty, and everything appeared to be in order. There was no indication of a struggle or any kind of foul play. Meanwhile, Anne began calling Trevor's friends and siblings, desperate for any scrap of information that might help locate her son. Trevor's older sister, Michelle, revealed that she had been trying to get in touch with him all weekend but had been unable to reach him. This was highly unusual for Trevor, who was normally very close with his family and would never go more than a day or two without returning their calls. As the hours ticked by with no word from Trevor, the Deely family's concern grew. They reached out to Trevor's close friend Glenn, hoping that he might have some insight into the young man's whereabouts. What Glenn told them only deepened the mystery surrounding Trevor's disappearance. Glenn, who worked as a flight attendant, had been out with some of Trevor's other friends on the night of December 7th. He and Trevor had been playing phone tag throughout the evening, trying to coordinate plans to meet up. In the early hours of December 8th, As Glenn lay in bed after returning home from his night out, he received a voicemail from Trevor. The message, which had been left around 4:05 a.m., was brief and to the point. Trevor apologized for missing Glenn and said that he would try to catch up with him later. He gave no indication that anything was wrong or out of the ordinary. The discovery of this voicemail was both a comfort and a source of frustration for the Dealey family. On the one hand, it confirmed that Trevor had been alive and well after leaving the bank that morning. On the other hand, it provided no clues as to where he might have gone or what might have happened to him after making the call. As the days stretched on with no sign of Trevor, the search for the missing man intensified. His older brother Mark traveled from Castle Bar, where he lived with his pregnant wife, to join in the efforts. Friends and volunteers blanketed the city with posters and flyers bearing Trevor's photograph and description, hoping that someone, somewhere, might have seen him. The Garda Síochána, Ireland's national police force, also launched an official investigation into Trevor's disappearance on December 12th. They searched the city's waterways and canvassed the area around the bank, looking for any witnesses who might have seen Trevor that morning. They also delved into the young man's background, searching for any clues that might shed light on his whereabouts. One avenue of investigation that the Garda explored was a recent trip that Trevor had taken to Anchorage, Alaska. The trip, which had been a spur-of-the-moment decision, was to visit a girl that Trevor had met over the summer. Although the girl had seemed less than enthusiastic about the idea of Trevor coming to visit, citing her busy schedule with final exams, he had gone ahead with the plan anyway. Investigators traveled to Alaska to interview the girl and others who might have had contact with Trevor during his visit. They also looked into the possibility that he might have run into trouble with an ex-boyfriend or some other individual while he was there. However, despite their efforts, they found no evidence to suggest that the Alaska trip was connected to Trevor's disappearance. It seemed to be nothing more than a red herring, a dead end in an increasingly complex and frustrating case. As the weeks turned into months with no sign of Trevor, his family and friends refused to give up hope. They continued to search for him, scouring the city and its surroundings for any trace of the missing man. One of Trevor's friends, a man named Conleth who worked for a company that sold CCTV equipment, took it upon himself to check if any footage of Trevor had been captured on the night of his disappearance. Conleth's efforts paid off when he discovered that the Bank of Ireland branch on Baggot Street Bridge had footage of Trevor from that fateful morning. However, he also learned that the footage was set to be deleted soon, as the bank only kept its CCTV recordings for a limited time. Conleth quickly convinced the bank manager to preserve the footage and hand it over to the Garda for analysis. The CCTV footage, which would go on to become a crucial piece of evidence in the investigation, showed a man in dark clothing waiting outside the Bank of Ireland Asset Management building for about half an hour before Trevor arrived around 3:30 a.m. The man could be seen following Trevor to a gate, which Trevor entered alone. Additional footage from the Bank of Ireland branch on Baggot Street, captured about 10 minutes later, showed Trevor walking down the street with his umbrella, followed by the same man in dark clothing. The discovery of this footage was a major breakthrough in the case, and investigators wasted no time in releasing it to the public. In January 2001, they appeared on an Irish television show called Crime Line and asked the man in dark clothing to come forward and identify himself. They hoped that by putting the footage out there, someone might recognize the man and provide information that could help locate Trevor. The response to the Crime Line broadcast was overwhelming, with over 80 tips pouring in from viewers who thought they might have seen the man in the footage or had other information about Trevor's disappearance. However, despite the flood of leads, none of them yielded any concrete results. The man in dark clothing remained unidentified, and Trevor's whereabouts were still a mystery. Over the next several years, investigators explored a variety of theories about what might have happened to Trevor. Some believed that he might have accidentally fallen into the water and drowned, given the stormy weather conditions that night and the fact that he was carrying a large umbrella that could have caught the wind. Others speculated that he might have taken his own life or voluntarily disappeared for unknown reasons. However, as time passed with no sign of Trevor or his belongings, these theories began to seem less and less likely. One theory that gained traction in the early days of the investigation was that Trevor might have been the victim of foul play. Given the suspicious behavior of the man in dark clothing on the CCTV footage, investigators considered the possibility that Trevor had been robbed, assaulted, and possibly even killed. They canvassed the area around the bank and the waterways, searching for any evidence that might support this theory. However, despite their best efforts, they found no concrete proof that Trevor had met with foul play that night. In 2016, Nearly 16 years after Trevor's disappearance, the case was handed over to the Garda Serious Crime Review team for a fresh look. The team, which specialized in cold cases, began by re-examining all of the evidence that had been gathered over the years, looking for any new leads or angles that might have been missed. One of the first things the review team did was send the CCTV footage to the UK for enhancement. Using state-of-the-art technology, they were able to produce clearer, more detailed images of the man in dark clothing and Trevor's movements that morning. When the enhanced footage was released to the public in April 2017, it generated a new wave of interest in the case. Investigators hoped that by putting the enhanced footage out there, someone might finally come forward with information about the man in dark clothing or Trevor's whereabouts. They emphasized that the man's behavior that morning was highly suspicious, given the length of time he had waited outside the bank before Trevor's arrival, and the fact that he had followed Trevor after he entered the building. In the summer of 2017, a new lead emerged that seemed to offer a promising new direction for the investigation. A confidential informant came forward claiming to know where Trevor's body was buried and implicating a known criminal in his death. According to the informant, Trevor had been the victim of a robbery gone wrong and had been killed by a career criminal with a history of drug smuggling. The informant provided investigators with a specific location, a 3-acre plot of wasteland in Chapelizod, where he claimed Trevor's remains were buried. The Garda quickly launched a search of the area, bringing in cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar to try to locate any signs of a grave. For weeks, they scoured the land, digging up anything that looked remotely suspicious. They even found a buried firearm, which raised hopes that they might be close to a breakthrough. However, despite their exhaustive efforts, the search of the Chapelizod property yielded no trace of Trevor or any evidence linked to his disappearance. The informant's claims, which had seemed so promising at first, began to look more and more like a dead end. Undeterred, the Garda continued to pursue other leads and theories. In August 2017, they received a new tip suggesting that Trevor might have been killed by a member of a well-known criminal family from Crumlin, a suburb of Dublin. The information, which came from a different confidential source, prompted a renewed search of the area around the Chapelizod property, this time focusing on the River Liffey. For days, divers combed the murky waters of the river, searching for any sign of Trevor or evidence related to his disappearance. They even found a stash of drugs worth over €80, 000, which investigators believed might be connected to the criminal gang implicated in Trevor's death. However, once again, the search came up empty. No trace of Trevor was found, and the lead fizzled out. As the years continued to pass with no resolution to the case, Trevor's family and friends struggled to come to terms with his disappearance. For his parents, Michael and Anne, the uncertainty and lack of closure were a constant source of pain and frustration. They refused to give up hope that their son might still be alive, even as the odds of finding him seemed to grow slimmer with each passing day. Trevor's siblings, Mark and Michelle, also struggled with the weight of his disappearance. Mark, who had left his pregnant wife to join the search for his brother, found it difficult to return to his normal life knowing that Trevor was still out there somewhere. Michelle, who had been racked with guilt over not trying harder to reach her brother that fateful weekend, channeled her energy into keeping his case in the public eye, doing interviews and attending events to raise awareness about missing persons. For Trevor's friends, the sense of loss and helplessness was overwhelming. Many of them, like Conleth and Carl, had played key roles in the investigation, doing everything they could to try to find their missing friend. Others, like Glenn, were haunted by the knowledge that they had been one of the last people to speak to Trevor before he vanished. The weight of that final conversation, which had seemed so innocuous at the time, hung heavy on their shoulders. As the 20th anniversary of Trevor's disappearance approached, the Garda made one final push to try to crack the case. They launched a renewed public appeal for information, releasing new details about the investigation and urging anyone with information to come forward. They also announced that they were offering a substantial reward for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for Trevor's disappearance. The response to the appeal was overwhelming, with hundreds of new tips and leads pouring in from across Ireland and beyond. Investigators worked around the clock to follow up on each and every one, hoping against hope that this time they might finally find the answers they had been seeking for so long. And then, in December 2023, a major breakthrough came from an entirely unexpected quarter. A man who had been identified as the person seen following Trevor on the CCTV footage from the Bank of Ireland branch on Bagot Street came forward to clear his name. As it turned out, The Garda had actually interviewed this man in the early days of the investigation, but had failed to properly follow up on his alibi or eliminate him as a suspect. The man, whose identity was not released to the public, provided investigators with a detailed account of his movements on the night of Trevor's disappearance. He explained that he had been out drinking with friends and had simply been walking home when he was captured on camera behind Trevor. He had no connection to Trevor or his disappearance, and had been living with the cloud of suspicion hanging over him for more than 2 decades. The revelation that the man on the CCTV footage had been identified and cleared was a bittersweet moment for Trevor's family and friends. On the one hand, it meant that one of the biggest question marks in the case had finally been resolved. On the other hand, it was a stark reminder of how many opportunities had been missed over the years, and how much time had been wasted chasing down false leads and dead ends. Despite this setback, the Garda remained committed to finding out what happened to Trevor Deely. They continued to investigate new leads and theories, and to work with experts in fields like forensic science and criminal profiling to try to uncover new avenues of inquiry. They also continued to appeal to the public for information, knowing that even the smallest detail could be the key to cracking the case. For Trevor's loved ones, the search for answers is a never-ending one. They know that the odds of finding him alive after all these years are slim, but they refuse to give up hope. They continue to tell his story, to keep his memory alive, and to fight for justice on his behalf. They do it because they know that Trevor deserves nothing less, and because they believe that someday, somehow, the truth will finally come to light. In the end, the story of Trevor Deely is a haunting reminder of the toll that a missing persons case can take on a family, a community, and a society. It is a story of love and loss, of hope and despair, and of the unbreakable bonds that tie us together as human beings. And it is a story that is still being written even now, more than 2 decades after Trevor first disappeared. For those who knew and loved Trevor, the pain of his loss is a constant companion. It is there in the quiet moments, when a song or a smell or a fleeting memory brings him rushing back to mind. It is there in the milestones and the holidays, the birthdays and the anniversaries that he should have been there to celebrate. And it is there in the unanswered questions, the nagging doubts and the never-ending what-ifs that haunt their dreams and their waking hours alike. But even as they grieve, Trevor's family and friends refuse to let his story be forgotten. They continue to speak out about his case, to share his photographs and his memories, and to keep the search for answers alive. They do it because they know that somewhere out there, someone knows something about what happened to Trevor that night. And they do it because they believe that every missing person deserves to be found, no matter how long it takes or how difficult the road may be. In many ways, Trevor Deely's disappearance is a reflection of the broader crisis of missing persons cases in Ireland and around the world. Every year, countless individuals vanish without a trace, leaving behind families and communities torn apart by grief and uncertainty. Some are found safe and sound, while others are never seen again. But all of them leave an indelible mark on those who knew and loved them, a void that can never truly be filled. For the Garda and other law enforcement agencies tasked with investigating these cases, the challenges are immense. They must sift through mountains of evidence, follow up on countless leads, and navigate the complex web of human relationships and motivations that can often hold the key to solving a case. They must also contend with the passage of time, as memories fade, evidence disappears, and the chances of a successful resolution grow ever slimmer. But even in the face of these challenges, there is hope. Advances in technology and forensic science have made it easier than ever to identify and track down missing persons, even years after they first disappeared. Social media and other online platforms have also given families and advocates new tools for raising awareness and generating leads, allowing them to reach a wider audience than ever before. Perhaps most importantly, the stories of missing persons like Trevor Deely have helped to shine a light on this often overlooked issue, generating new levels of public interest and concern. They have inspired people from all walks of life to get involved in the search for missing loved ones, whether by volunteering their time and resources, sharing information on social media, or simply keeping the conversation alive. And so, even as the search for Trevor Deely continues, his story serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience and determination of the human spirit. It is a testament to the love and loyalty of those who refuse to give up on him, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. And it is a call to action for all of us, to do whatever we can to help bring missing persons home and to provide support and solace to those who are left behind. In the end, The story of Trevor Deely is a story without an ending, a mystery that may never be fully solved. But it is also a story of hope and possibility, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a chance for light to break through. And for those who loved him, that hope is enough to keep them going, day after day, year after year, until the answers they seek are finally found. As the investigation into Trevor's disappearance enters its third decade, the Garda remain committed to exploring every possible lead and avenue of inquiry. They continue to work closely with Trevor's family and friends, as well as with international law enforcement agencies and missing persons organizations, to ensure that no stone is left unturned. They also continue to appeal to the public for information, knowing that even the smallest detail could be the key to cracking the case. They urge anyone who may have seen or heard anything suspicious in the area around the Bank of Ireland Asset Management building on the night of Trevor's disappearance to come forward, no matter how insignificant it may seem. For Trevor's family, the search for answers is a never-ending one. They know that the passage of time has made it increasingly unlikely that they will ever find out exactly what happened to their beloved son and brother. But they also know that they owe it to him to keep trying, to keep his memory alive, and to keep fighting for the justice he deserves. In recent years, they have channeled their grief and their determination into advocacy work, joining with other families of missing persons to raise awareness and push for changes in the way these cases are handled. They have lobbied for increased funding and resources for missing persons investigations and for greater support for families and communities affected by these tragedies. They have also worked to keep Trevor's story in the public eye, participating in documentaries, interviews, and other media projects that help to shed light on his case and the broader issue of missing persons. They know that every time Trevor's name is mentioned, every time his photograph is shared, it brings them one step closer to the answers they so desperately seek. As the years continue to pass, the pain of Trevor's loss never truly fades, but his family and friends find solace in the knowledge that they have done everything in their power to find him and to bring him home. They take comfort in the memories they shared with him, in the laughter and the love that defined his all-too-short life, and they hold fast to the belief that someday, somehow, the truth will finally come to light. Whether it is through a sudden breakthrough in the investigation, a long-buried memory resurfacing, or a chance encounter with someone who holds the key to the mystery, they know that the answers are out there, waiting to be found. Until then, they will continue to keep Trevor in their hearts and their minds, to honor his memory and to fight for the justice he deserves. They will continue to lean on each other for support and strength, and to find hope in the face of even the deepest despair. And they will continue to tell his story, to anyone who will listen, in the hope that someday someone will hear it and come forward with the information they need to bring Trevor home at last. For the people of Ireland, and for all those around the world who have been touched by Trevor's story, the search for answers goes on. It is a search that transcends time and space, that unites strangers and loved ones alike in a common cause. And it is a search that will not end until Trevor is found, and the truth is finally brought to light. May the road rise up to meet him, may the wind be always at his back, and may the sun shine warm upon his face, until he is reunited with those who love him, and the mystery of his disappearance is finally laid to rest.